So thank you all so much for joining us. We've had some challenges, but we're plowing right ahead today. Cheryl Cambay was the business development liaison that was here to help, but we couldn't get her sound working, so I'm standing in for Cheryl. And Jamie Vink, the president of the Meadows, had something urgent come up, and Jennifer Angier, our vice president of addiction services, stepped in at the last minute. So we're grateful for Jennifer. And we'll save Jamie's presentation for another day. And Jennifer will be speaking on the movement of recovery today, which is
basically there's like this. He's like faded.
Having, let's see, crashing into his room or whatever. I'm hearing some background noise, and I'm not seeing anybody to. Oh, here we go.
Do I get that shouting out? Yeah.
Please,
okay. There we go. I got it. Okay. So I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer. Jennifer is, like I said, she's the vice president of addiction services at the Meadows Behavioral Healthcare. And Jennifer is, well, her bio says a seasoned professional, but she's a very dear friend and a very much a professional in the behavioral healthcare field and very compassionate caregiver. She has 3 decades of clinical and operational experience, and she serves as our vice president of patient care services, and she leads the Meadows in case management, a program that she's deeply passionate about. She's nationally recognized expert in addiction and treatment techniques, and she regularly speaks at national conferences to paraprofessional groups and in employee assistance programs, healthcare, and collegiate settings. And Jennifer has held several prominent leadership roles, including Group CEO for Talbot Recovery Campus, CEO for Black Bear Lodge, both are in Georgia. And she's earned her bachelor's degree from Georgia State University, graduating summa cum laude. And her master's degree is in organizational leadership from Mercer University, graduating with highest honors. So Jennifer, I'm so grateful that you were able to step in today, and I know everybody's going to really benefit from this. I know I have in the past from your presentation. So take it from here.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me, Cindy?
Oh yeah, you're good. I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for kind of going with the flow. I don't see anybody. All of y'all have your cameras off. Feel free, even if you're at home or sort of in a casual space, you can flick your cameras on. That's I always love to see faces as we talk. So first of all, I want to thank you for the work you do, and I want to thank you for your service, for those of you that have a service in the military, and for all of you for being drawn to the work of helping those who are in our military. There's so much humanity in their lives, so many things that they so bravely attend to, and then, of course, as trauma and addiction have moved into their lives, and you're there, seated there, waiting for them to help them. It's a big deal for them to ask for help. At the Meadows, we get to also be of service to those folks in our military and their families. And I will say what stands out about those patients for me in our career is how surprised they are that they're in the seat, right? It feels to them like such a failure that there was they weren't able to combat this on their own. And so being able to hold that space and sorry, Cheryl sent an email that just said she's sorry she couldn't get her volume to work. So she's here with us in spirit, but we couldn't hear from her. So being able to be there as they walk in the door and just feel like this coming here and being brave enough to do this work is a failure instead of what we can see it as, which is so courageous. So I wanted to kind of talk about what the journey that I believe that all of us have been a part of is this movement of recovery, and how when a patient shows up in our office or in our facility, what it is that we're trying to help them be able to step into, and the movement of how recovery moves. It was interesting when we were getting ready to start, Cindy asked me a question, seemingly randomly, which was, do you call patients patients, or do you call people patients, or do you call them clients? And I think that I just wanted to give that voice because it was so randomly came up for both of us. For me, I think the most important thing is are they a patient, are they a client? It's that they're a human. They're a human being that's suffering. And for whatever reason, when I started in this field, my introduction to this human, my ability to sort of sit on the floor and be in the process of where they've been, their suffering, the language of them being a patient just came very naturally. For others, that feels like stigmatizing them, and client provides that respect, the space. I think it's whatever comes authentically to us, and just being asked. When Cindy said that, just at the moment, why do you call them patients? Why do others call them clients? So I think it tells the story of the whole meaning of this talk. So I think that that first I want to acknowledge our work, right? And understanding what taking the time out. And again, I appreciate so much for you. I know CMEs are involved and CEUs and all of that, but I think it's also caring for yourself by being reminded of the beauty of this work. And for our patients, what we're inviting them into, what I get to have the conversation with them is that this is a devouring task, right? What they're moving into of what has happened with their experience of having the disease of addiction, with their experience of trauma, with their experience of mental illness, and then also how that has started to sort of eat away at the soul of who they feel they are. And I think for all of us, being able to be in the presence of this work is there's so many different ways that we could have all gone in our career, our patients and ourselves, all of us as humans. But I think this is really what we're all looking for. What Parker Palmer describes as this deeper congruence between our inner and our outer life. I remember where I was standing the day I said, I have to do this work. I had no business moving towards this career. I had a 7th grade education. I was only 2 years sober. But all I know was I had to be near them, near this process that is so, I think, so profoundly spiritual. So that sort of started my journey of this work, of starting my education, but at the same time having the privilege of taking just about every job that was offered. I started as a receptionist. I was a terrible receptionist, and then I got to do more and more things as I was trained to do them, to the point of being able to have the opportunity to have the conversations with patients about this work. So many of the folks that I've gotten to treat, I have had the privilege of most of my career is working with impaired professionals, with doctors, lawyers, pilots, with, again, people in the military, people who have found their way into a position of being titled as a leader. But I think, as we all know, every single opportunity in our life is an opportunity for us to lead people out of the darkness, whether our job title is that we're a leader or that our life experience is that we see people who are suffering and we know that journey that they've been on. So again, I want to honor and thank you for your work that has created the opportunity for you to sit in this place with folks. So I want to talk about who that person is that shows up at the Meadows that first day, who that person was for me that showed up in treatment on July 6, 1987, an 18-year-old girl that had completely forgotten any sort of sense of who I was. And I love this quote from Paul Simon, because what he says is that this gift that we've been given when we have the courage to walk into treatment, that day that we have this opportunity, what we often call the sobriety date, what we often call our date of admission, the question that we ask our patients, why are you here? Why now? Why today? And what what I see in this process is the story of how they begin to remember. The biggest gift, I believe, of early recovery from, again, any of the reasons why people come to us, trauma, addiction, process addiction, mental health, is the ability to turn in the direction of their past and start to be able to see the truth. Not because it's just that they've been lying about what has been happening to them, but truly one of the most devastating things that happens as a result of this complex relationship with the disease of addiction and trauma is that we start to lose sight of what is true about who we are and what is true about the experience that's been happening. So being able to turn and see in the direction of truth of what has been happening to me, and tell the story of this experience of really the truth of trauma. So when somebody is brought into the Meadows or in any of the places that I've gotten to work with them, and I'm being asked to see, is there a process that's going on with the disease of addiction? What I'm looking for are these three things. If somebody has been drinking, using, or acting out sexually, or has an eating disorder, or any of the things, they will have experienced these three things: progression, the ability to create stories about that progression, and loss. And when we talk about progression, most of the time, using the example of the disease of addiction, what we talk about is what happens to our patients if they return back to drinking. So just asking for anyone to share, when you think of progression, what are the symptoms that you have seen in your practice before? What are the ways that you've seen progression take over the life of the folks that you've treated? Anyone at all? Cindy, if you can unmute them and someone wants to share their experience of that.
Yeah, everybody, you have the ability to unmute yourself. So if you would like to answer questions and turn on your camera, please feel free.
So Kathy said, yeah, Kathy says not making good choices. So often when we look at progression, it's inability to stop using despite negative consequences, right? So there are these things that have been piling up that seem very obvious to the people that love them, that seem very obvious to the rest of the world. And yet when it comes to the choice of picking up that drink again, they are unable to examine the truth about what's happened to them. And every other time they've done this, and they keep getting worse. So the way that Chad says compounding losses, and just the way that you said that, Chad, those particular words, I really do love that, because it's like every single loss isn't just an individual experience. That loss weighs in on the other losses. And it's like slowly we begin to not only lose things to the action of the relationship with alcoholism or drug dependency. It's that we start to lose pieces of ourselves. So the way that I describe progression is if you think of every single thing that is me, everything that makes me Jennifer, and it's piled up here on this desk, right? Everything from my liver, kidneys, to the ways that my cells work, to my sense of humor, to my experience, to my gifts, everything is piled up on this desk right here. The way that I look at progression is every time I use, it's like I have to take something off of this table and hand that thing over to you, right? Every time I pick up a drink, it's like I lose something that makes me who I am. And in the beginning, it may seem like very simple things, right? Like for me, one of the things that would be piled up on this desk are my cowboy boots. I have this amazing collection of cowboy boots. It's all I ever wear. So it's these little things. But the deeper I go and the longer I'm suffering from this illness, I go deeper into the soul of who I am. So every time it's like I take something off this desk and I hand it away. But that's not the worst part of progression. What's worse than that is every time I take something off of this table and I hand it to you, I say, here, take this thing. I don't need it. And that is how we miss the truth about what we're losing. And the reason for that, for those of you that have had the opportunity to hear one of our senior fellows, is he talks about the consequence of the disease has hijacked the orbital frontal cortex. I can see myself in the future without this thing and I'm okay. When there's interference with the orbital frontal cortex, which we now know is happening with the disease of addiction, process addiction, and trauma, is that we miss the ability to see the truth about what's happened. So we overvalue future drug-related rewards, and I underestimate the probability that how I think this is going to work out, it will work out as I intended to. So here, take this thing, I don't need it, because the use of the chemical is going to be more rewarding than the thing that I'm losing. And I undervalue the negative consequences of using drugs, and I underestimate the probability that that's going to occur at all. So I get the math wrong. So as I progress into this pile of things that I'm losing, it seems so obvious that these are things that are leaving my life and I should value them, but I don't see their value as I see the value of survival of the continued use of chemicals. And that's not the worst part, because every time I take something off this table and I hand it off and I say, here, take this, I don't need it, I have to live without that thing. And that's where our lives become more and more disturbed by the history, as I said, of being able to turn this way, and I lose the ability to see the truth about that thing. So when the anterior cingulate cortex is engaged or offline, I cannot observe myself through your eyes, and I start to miss the cues that you're trying to give me. So I lose the ability to respond to errors in the past, and I lose this crucial behavioral guidance system because I'm unable to respond to errors in the past with regard to reward and punishment. So here, take this thing, I don't need it. I don't see the consequence that's happened in my life. And I start to create stories that guide me further away from you. And so what that looks like on the outside is what I've heard over and over and over again in my life as I was using. What is wrong with you? How can you not see that this is happening? But when these two areas of the brain are offline, I cannot see that the reward of using chemicals should be influenced by the punishment that I receive. So it seems like we're losing sense of integrity. It seems like the things that matter to us should matter more. But really what's happening is as I continue to lose these things, this compounding effect of things that I lose as I progressively get worse, I start to not only as I lose them, as I hand them away, I tell myself the story that they don't matter anyways. And that starts to influence the way the world looks at me and the way that my family says, how could you do this to your children? When my peers say, how could you not show up for work again and leave all this responsibility on me? And as a doctor, when I walk into the operating room and I'm under the influence, how could I forget all that matters to me about this patient and about the practice of this science? How can I convince myself that nothing will go wrong in this operating room? And as a matter of fact, this patient is better. I'm a better doctor because I'm under the influence. Those stories start to interfere with the way all of life starts to see us, the way the legal system sees us, the way our spouses, our loved ones see us, and our children, the way everybody. When I would walk into a room, it would be like people would have a different reaction to me based on how I'd behaved. So it isn't just that when I take something off this table and I hand it to Cindy and I say, here, take this, I don't need it. It isn't just that when I hand that thing over to her, I have to live without that thing. Even worse than that, I start to believe that that is the truth about me. So I come into this experience of treatment at the Meadows. I walk in the door, and it isn't just that I have a profoundly dysfunctional relationship with the chemical that I'm using, a profoundly dysfunctional relationship with the history of trauma that I've been experiencing. I believe the stories that I've been telling to myself. So I need to be able to, when I sit with a patient, be able to help them see that not only the things that have happened are the problems, but the stories they've created about them. So for example, for me, when I got into treatment, having had a 7th grade education, you can imagine that what I had been saying to myself for a very long time is that I was stupid, right? Because it started that I when I got to school, the only time I could use freely, because my parents kept grounding me, I'm probably technically still grounded, was that the only time I could use was in school. So I couldn't be in class and do that. I had to get out of class. So my job became to lie, so nobody noticed I wasn't in class. But the other thing that started to happen was people were actually learning things in that classroom, things that I wasn't learning. And when I would show up and they would give a test, what would happen? I would not know the answers. So what I had to do was look at somebody else's paper to see what they were doing. So I started to cheat. But I didn't notice, or it didn't even seem like I was making a decision to cheat. I just started to cheat. And I had to get what I needed. So I became somebody that cheated on tests. I became somebody that started to find ways to have different answers because I couldn't fail that test. But soon I would get, moved to eighth grade or ninth grade, and the tests were harder to cheat on. And so they would give me these questions and I couldn't answer them. And so what would I assume? The reason I couldn't answer them was because I was stupid. And I would walk through life with this belief about myself that I was stupid. So imagine how when things came to me into my life and they offered me the opportunity to learn, I wouldn't learn. So by the time I got to treatment, excuse me, at age 18, I'd never read a piece of literature. I couldn't multiply and divide. And so about a year and a half into my sobriety, somebody gave me a book and they said, read this. And I said to them, I've told you this before, I don't read well. I can read, but it doesn't do for me what it does to other people. That's a story, right? But I took the book for some reason and I went into the other room and I started reading it. And the book just changed my life. I had never heard this story. It was To Kill a Mockingbird. And I'd never known that any of this had occurred. I didn't know that characters and humans could be portrayed in such a dark, dark way of humanity, or in such a beautiful way, the story of justice and freedom. I was changed at that moment. And I came out of that room having read that book and said, do you have anything else like this? And I was given the Uncle Tom's Cabin. Same thing happened. Then I was given The Diary of Anne Frank, and I was given Man's Search for Meaning, and the pursuit of knowledge started to happen in my life. And that's the beauty of this side of recovery. The movement of recovery was that I was able to start to challenge the story that I was stupid. I was able to start to learn information and walk about this life having read these books and known these truths. And so as recovery starts to move in this direction, as my timeline starts to progress this way, I'm influenced by truth, by things that I had never known before. And those decisions, I get to start believing I could maybe go to college. And when I went to college, I found out there was so many other things I didn't know, and I was able to start to learn. And a person that's educated lives in the world very differently than a person that's uneducated. But here's another truth about recovery. As I move down to my timeline, let's say I've moved this way in this direction, and I'm 6 months, 9 months, 5 years down the road, and I'm starting to learn things. As I turn this way and look at the truth of my life, imagine who I would be if I'd have read To Kill a Mockingbird when you read To Kill a Mockingbird. Imagine the girl that I would have been if that story had the influence on me that it had on me when I was 21 years or 20 years old. I don't know who that girl is, and I'll never know, because that girl is long gone. And that's the consequence of using. And that's something that this woman gets to make a decision about. And so when I start to have an idea of using again, I remember now the things that I lost. I can see, because it's at a deeper level. It's higher than my brain reminded me. Remember that time you did this, that bad thing happened. Now there's an impact on my using to purpose and meaning, something higher than me, something that in Alcoholics Anonymous they call a power greater than myself. And it's harder to give those things away in service of picking up a drink. So it isn't that consequences are what keep us sober. It isn't that being able to look this way and see all the bad things that I did. It's actually meaning and purpose. Bill Wilson, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, said, great suffering and great love are AA's disciplinarians. We need no others. So at first, I am disciplined by the suffering. I am disciplined by being able to see the truth about what's happened to me, but I become more and more disciplined by the experience of being informed by life. So going back to what I said here, the powerful pulsing of love in the veins. Now I can tell the story of who I possibly could have known and what I possibly could have done. And instead of that being just another thing about me that makes me a loser, it becomes an inspiration towards why I stay sober. And so we have to be able to help folks understand what it means to have access to love, to purpose, to meaning. So a lot of people believe that people in position, safety sensitive positions, like, for example, pilots, for example, military pilots. Those folks have one of the highest level of success rates in all of the treatment of addiction. And so people often say it's because they were monitored. It's because they had disciplinary consequences. It's because they had consequences. And the more and more I worked with this population, I don't believe that that's the truth about why they were able to have such high rates of success. It's because the things about them that had started to dim as a result of handing them over came back alive again. And it was the meaning of being in that cockpit. It was the purpose of their lifetime that it felt like that is what they were staying. That's what they were able to hold on to. Something more important than just the bad things that would happen. So if we lace all of the beauty of recovery that goes this way with, if you don't go this way, you're going to keep losing these things, that's not enough to inspire a person. That's not enough to say that we want this deeper congruence. So recovery starts to open this back up again. This idea that there is a match between the things that have happened in my life and the things that I'm empowered by. And that's the gift we start to be able to give in recovery. So we have to unwrap all of these stories that we've been telling ourselves, that this didn't matter, that this is who I am because this is what I've done, and kind of hand it back at our feet of saying, it is possible that the reason I believe this about me was because I was under the influence of a progressively fatal disease that didn't just put me in danger of dying because of the physical consequences. It was putting me to sleep. It was making me doubt the things that I knew to be true about me. And so there's this experience that starts to happen in recovery, which is sort of time is frozen. There's allowing patients to see the origins of their resistance, in creating a possibility where all therapeutic interventions, all of them are an opportunity for truth. They all point in the direction of truth. And the truth is how we stay sober. So let's say that everything in this room that I'm in right now, okay, every single thing of the room that you're in right now, let's say that it is all of that is influenced by truth, right? Every single cell of every single thing that's happening in the room you're in right now is the truth. And on July 6, 1987, when I got sober, on the day that these patients walked into treatment, it's like someone opened that door behind me and kicked me into this room. I don't know what it was that allowed me to get into this room at the time that it did, but I'm still searching to be able to go back and say thank you to that. I'm still wondering what could have loved me enough to come find me in those dark times and bring me into such a beautiful room where there was truth. But recovery doesn't just eliminate the stories that surround me, that I can't see the truth all around me. I come into the room, I come into your office, believing these things that I'm sort of trapped behind. And the work of recovery, the rest of the days of all my therapy, of all my interactions between you and me, is about moving everything out of the way so I can experience the truth. And the truth isn't always pretty, and the truth isn't always easy, but the truth always leads us to a more spiritual connection of either I need help, or you are beautiful and I want you in my life, or I wonder what this really means. Because the truth of all of it isn't just the things that we've done, but the idea of using, for example, the formula of the 12 steps. We're told that when we first get sober, that it's only by working a perfect first step that we're able to stay sober. And imagine what we're saying to somebody who's walked into our office, who's come into the Meadows, who's come into my life from anywhere. And I've said, your only chance at living is for you to be able to do this thing right now perfectly. the stories that we've built up about our lives is that I don't do anything right, let alone perfectly. It's a lot of pressure to tell somebody that they have to be able to work step one perfectly, especially when their experience is that they now know that they forget that they can't drink successfully. So if you're going to remember anything I say here today, the best definition I have about the disease of addiction is I can't drink successfully and I always think I can. I can't drink successfully because of the way that my body and mind are aligned with the chemical and the dopamine experience that I have. So one drink always means two drinks, and two drinks always means I don't know what's going to happen next. And I have this thing that happens to me in my mind, which is I forget the consequences of what one drink even means. Again, using some of the literature speaking to the disease of addiction of Alcoholics Anonymous, what they say is it is the thinking that precedes the drink that we think is the crux of our problem. So the fact that I can tell myself that I'm going to drink this drink and there won't be consequences is the disease of addiction, right? And so what we're looking for when we're trying to help somebody see it is, do you have this ability to create a story that makes the consequences of taking this chemical in less than what they're really going to be? So I remember for me, again, I can use this example because it's so real to me. I was in treatment. I had just gone to the lecture that told the story of the disease of addiction. And I remember walking up to the nurse's station and saying, I'm going to drink again. And the nurse looked up from her paperwork and she said, right now. And I said, no, not right now, but I know I'm going to drink again. And I just heard that lecture in there. And I know that if I continue to drink, I'm going to die. I could hear him. And I'd never heard that before, even though everybody had been trying to tell me that that freeze on my brain had been sort of temporarily suspended. I was given the gift of being kicked into this room, and in this room, I could hear the truth. And the truth was, it didn't matter how bad it was. It didn't matter how good it was. One day I was going to make the decision to drink again. And so when I said that to her, she said, are you going to drink right now? And I said, no, not right now. But I don't know if you've been reading this truth about me that I now have been given in this room, but it was almost like a book had been given to me. A book has been given to our patients when they walk into this room, and it says, here's the truth about you and your relationship with trauma. Here's the truth about you and your relationship with alcohol and drugs. And it's a big book. It's huge. And when I started leafing through those pages, it was like I could see on chapter 28 that I needed to stop drinking, but there were 6,000 more chapters. I could feel the weight of the book. And every time I turned the page, it was almost too terrifying to turn the page, because now I could see what was really happening. I was able to be turned this way, and I could see that I was prostituting myself for drugs, something I didn't even know that was happening. I just thought I was getting free drugs, right? I just thought I was playing those 30-year-old men so I could get their drugs, and I would do whatever it took to get it. And I was in control. How could I have missed that? How did I not know the truth about that? And I knew that that happened in chapter 45, and there were still 6,000 more chapters. And so I was trying to, metaphorically hand her this book and say, look at this. Something's going to happen, or nothing's going to happen, and I'm going to use again. And remember, I'm standing in front of that nurse's station with a pile of stories of things that I believe about myself, that I'm an awful person, that I'm stupid, that nobody cares about me, that life is all transactional. And now I have this horrible truth of the first step that says, look at this, you're going to use again. And that nurse gave me one of the most generous gifts I had ever been given. When she asked me again for the fourth time, are you going to use right now? And I started to think she was probably the dumbest nurse in the world. And I said, no, but I know I will soon. She just looked at me and smiled, and she said, honey, you're getting it. You understand that you can not need to use, that you cannot want to use, that you shouldn't use. And your mind will tell you, because of all of these things, that you can do it again. You need help. So you see, the first step we can't do the first step. We can't tell the story of our relationship with trauma. We can't tell the story of our relationship with process addiction until we've been granted the gift of being in the room of truth and being able to see the truth. So it is, again, using the formula of the 12 steps, which most of our patients have experienced in one way or the other. I think our work is to help them see, we know for a fact that this formula works. Not saying it's the only formula out there, but here's the formula. Let's figure out what will work for you. If AA is never going to be the course that you follow, I don't want to get in a power struggle about that. Let's just look at the principles of this formula and see how you can live in this room with those things. And so in that formula, there is this thing called step 2. And step 2 says, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Most people get tripped up on this part of the formula because they think that has to be God. They think that has to be that they sign up, that they review all these CVs coming in about who God is going to be. And that's not what step 2 is. Step 2 is a gift that now I can see the truth. And I don't have to pick a God. I just have to tell the truth, right? And so my work is a work of action. It's not a work of dogma or of religion, or in some ways even of committing to any way of spirituality. It's, can you hear the truth? So start to tell it. Here's the book, read it. Tell the story of what's been happening to you in this relationship with trauma. So we have this thing at the Meadows that we do. It's called Survivors Week. We do trauma work throughout their entire treatment. Very, very calculated ways of helping people's central nervous systems settle down so they can create we can help them have a safe container where they can do the work of their trauma. And so it doesn't happen right away. It's typically on their third week or fourth week of treatment that all time stops and they go into this thing called Survivors Week, which is the essence of the Meadows work. And they start to do the work of their childhood traumas. And so you have a person that for the first time in their life is able to turn this way and see that 6-year-old kid that they were and see how that trauma occurred to them. And from this perspective, see and have compassion for that experience, have access to the whole truth. And so what they do in that moment is they tell the group. They simply sit in your office and they say, I don't know how to say this. I don't have a lot of words, but this is what happened to me. And that profound experience of being able to verbalize the truth, of having another human being hold that space, bear witness, and they're possibly able to give them a few things that say, you're safe now. This is what's happening real time. You're protecting that part of you. You're speaking up. We do the work. We do the work that we do in therapy. So that patient comes out of Survivors Week and they are a different human being. When you ask them, what happened for you in Survivors Week? The best way I can describe the way they do it, or the way they say it, is they just sort of look off into the distance and they kind of shake their head and they say, something I've never felt before. Like a weight has been lifted off of me. Like I can see something I've never seen before. Like I have compassion. Other people had compassion for me. Everyone's experience is different, but there is this mystical quality of sort of knowing something that they haven't known before. So that's right here. That happened today. Now imagine as they move forward in the timeline of their life. Now they've come to find you. They're in therapy with you. Because they're motivated by how serious this was that happened to them, they're doing the work. They're doing more EMDR. They're doing more central nervous system regulation. They're telling more details of the story. They're building up, the work of trauma. So now let's fast forward to a year down the road. The person that's been doing the work, that's a year further down the road, and can look this way now down the timeline of their life with the experience of this past year and the experience of being able to see the truth of their lifetime. Now they're angry. Now they're furious. Now they see that precious child and the way that this trauma affected them. You see, they have more information. The scaffolding is more intact. And so they're capable of seeing more and understanding more. And that's the work of recovery, is always being able to take the truth that we've been under the influence of. The stories have kind of moved away a little bit more. And from that perspective, start to speak for ourselves and speak of the loss that the disease has created. So there is this experience of being able to see the whole story more and more. So we have to continue to honor that process of recovery. And so as I'm able to sort of have step 2 work in the way of whatever you want to call it, where I'm able to see more of the truth, I have to continue to tell that truth. And that sort of drops you into the formula again of a 3rd step, whatever that looks like. But this is where a lot of our patients push back and say, I cannot, I'm not, I've tried God before. I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic. I'm an abused. I got sexually molested in the Catholic Church. Whatever it is that has become a barrier for them to feel safe in that conversation. And so what I often share with my patients is step 3 is not about picking a God. Step 3 is, how do you demonstrate your decision? I need help. So one of the things I know to be true about patients that have been under the influence of process addictions or trauma or any of these things is that they don't recognize the ways that they're fighting for themselves. Everything they do feels like a failure. So one of the things that's important about step 3 isn't to look at what we're doing wrong. It's to look at what we're doing right. When I'm lecturing to a group of patients of, say, 100 patients, and I ask any one of them to give me 5 examples of the ways that they demonstrated their decision to turn their will and their life over to truth, to anything. Do you know that it's very rare that I have any one person be able to give me 5 ways? What they can tell me is 5 things they did wrong, but they cannot share with me 5 things that they did that was really beautiful for themselves. Why? Because the stories have taught them to only look for the dark things, the things they did wrong. So even in yourself, as you sit here now, I want you to try to think of whatever your spiritual practice is, whatever your practice is of being brave enough to look at the truth of any one thing in your relationship, in your life. Can you think of 5 things that you've done to demonstrate that decision in a positive way just today? Anybody that wants to share or type them out or even just consider them for yourself? What are some things that you've done? Cindy, I know you can talk. Give me an example of 5 things that you've done today that demonstrate your decision to be a better human.
Oh gosh, taking care of my animals in the morning. I love to get up at sunrise and go take care of my animals. And to me, that just makes me feel whole.
And I bet at our time, 12:42 in the afternoon, if I asked you 5 things that you hadn't done well, I bet you could rattle those off really quickly.
Of
right?
course.
5
I
things
could
you're
give you
behind
15.
on. Yeah, exactly. But when you just said, taking care of my horses, I love the way that feels. Did you feel the difference of how it felt?
Yeah, you're right. And
So
I don't know that you don't get asked that question often either.
So, and I'm looking at what other people have said. Seth said, I'm attending this webinar, right? And Seth, I bet even like when you saw that the topic had changed, you had this opportunity to go, well, I'm not going to stay, or whatever, but you stayed in the seat. You have no idea. You didn't even know who I was. You didn't even know what I was going to talk about. And yet you demonstrated your decision by staying in the seat, right? Most of the time when our patients are sitting in the office and they're telling you all the things they did wrong, just to stop for a moment and say, you came to your session today. I think that's amazing, right? So Chad said, I use any skill or talent that I have to improve the lives of those that I assist, right? And so in our work, it is so crushing to see when patients are continued to be hurt by this thing. When you get the call that somebody has died or someone has lost their life from suicide or from an overdose, those are the times when I just sit in my chair and I'm like, this thing is outpacing me. I remember one time when I was CEO at a place called Black Bear, and we had a patient leave against medical advice, and he died that night from an overdose. And came back in, and I went immediately to the housekeeping staff where they meet in the morning. And at Black Bear, we had the best housekeeping staff. They did towel art for the patients where they made like swans, and they study, like if somebody was a gator fan, they'd learn how to make a gator out of towels. And I went to them and I just said, I know the bed that Thomas slept in last night was made with love, and it was that you thought about him as you cleaned and cared for his space. And I want you to know that the last bed he slept in was love. And see, we to be able to go back and find the beauty of the work that you do, even in the darkest of days. Wendy said this morning she read about the growth mindset. There's others that have said Kathy said being compassionate to others. So in this ability to look at step threes, you can see we can spend hours with our patients trying to help them figure out who God is or be open to it. You know what? A good number of probably almost every patient I've had that has come and said, like, I am an atheist. Do you think I haven't tried to not be an atheist? I've tried. And when you start to look at the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance, and this is one of the areas I sort of kind of pull back from my complete endorsement of some of the literature that's been written. Really, a lot of what it says to them is, that's okay, that you're an atheist is fine. Just hang tight. Pretty soon you're going to believe in God. And that, you think they don't see that or they don't notice that. The chapter we tell them to read we agnostics, it's peppered with that information. What I believe is if someone is authentically an atheist, their work isn't to become something else. It's to be an atheist, not because they hate all of the religions. It's to explore the vastness of what that means for them, the faith that it requires somebody to believe the way that they've been chosen to believe. It's an exploration of that actually happens further down in the formula. What step 3 is about isn't to just admit there has to be a God. It's how did you demonstrate your decision? And the problem with step 3 is most people don't know how to see how they've been demonstrating their decision. I could talk about that all day because I just think it's so beautiful to be able to be reminded of. I had a friend one time who got sober at the same time I did, and but she was extremely suicidal, and she was having her final attempt in her mind to kill herself on that day. She was living in a very, very, very just disgustingly dirty house. Like the whole house was one giant cat box, ashtrays, cigarettes, empty, just, you know the deal, food. It's just the whole place was filthy. She was drunk, she was smoking, and she was cutting. And she did a horribly deep cut, and she dropped the blade in the ashtray. And when she came to, she picked up the blade and she wiped it on her pants before she cut again, because something in her said, you're going to get a terrible infection. And just that thought saved her life. She said, if something in me wants to live enough that it's concerned about an infection, I want to know what that is. Just that tiny little trace of willingness saved her life. And so we have to start to acknowledge those things in ourselves. And so the rest of the work of the movement of recovery is so beautiful, but it's the mystic's job, the way the universe works, or truth, or you, or those beautiful human beings that come into our lives that remind us that this experience that Jung talks about is the process. It is the path. That when it rains or when it burns, that is not you being off the path. That is the path, that we're still on it, because it's all about becoming. And so to teach and create a scaffolding that helps them hold their fear and their past traumas and our experience with how we deflate when things are seemingly acknowledging what a horrible person we are or how terrible life is. Instead, there's this creation of a scaffolding of purpose that's built around us, that becoming is all of it, right? It is absolutely all of it. And so a lot of that happens as we start to really look at the work and therapy that we do with our folks, which is helping them see, having perspectives on things like their resentments, like their fears, like their beliefs in themselves, how they just give themselves away to the lowest bidder. I mean, I know for me, like I remember my therapist saying, you don't even give yourself away to the highest bidder. You give yourself away to the lowest bidder, right? Like I didn't see any value in myself. So if you even turned your head and acknowledged me, I would throw all of me at you, right? And that was the story of my trauma. That was the story of being a 14-year-old person addicted to chemicals. So it's the whole of us. So as we move through that process, there comes a point in recovery where we are able to start to see that how we have disconnected from others. And so this process of amends, this process of how I step back to, let's say, Wendy K, who's on this call, let's say Wendy and I are sisters, right? And let's say, Wendy, I've hurt you in ways that I can't, that are just unfathomable. And now that I've been able to turn this way and see the truth, it isn't because you're an asshole or mom and dad loved you more or you never cared about me. Now I can actually see the truth about what happened. And because I've been doing the work, the scaffolding has been built up inside of me. My ego strength is created a space where I am able to see the truth and not collapse into it, right? Where I can see that now I know that that you're a beautiful person and that I missed it all along, that you're my sister, right? And I did these things that put barriers between us. And so I have a compassion for myself for what happened. And it is my responsibility to honor and own those things because I know if I don't, I'm capable of worse. If I don't continue on this path, I can go dark again and I can continue to do the things that I was doing before. When I lose access to the truth, I lose access to all things. And so I come to you, and as I'm driving to your house, right, I'm gripping onto my steering wheel. My sponsor has told me, or my mentors told me exactly what I'm going to say. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to say I wasn't the sister that you deserve to have. I wasn't the sister that got to see how beautiful you were. My behavior was wrong. No buts, no, none of that. But that's not what I'm really saying. As I'm driving over to your house and gripping my steering wheel, I'm just like, please be able to say this. I just want to not mess this up. I don't want to hurt her again. I just want her to hear me. I'm saying all those things. And I'm also saying, because I know no matter what you say, no matter if you accept my amends or not, that I have to be able to accept your decision. And if you say no, if you say not now, you drove my kids drunk, I can't have you in my life right now, then I turn to Pilar and to the other Wendy and to Seth, and I do exactly what I said I was going to do for you. I move forward with that experience of love, and I don't demand that you accept that, right? But because I had that drive of the steering wheel, right? Because I experienced that, I now know what I'm begging for is mercy, right? What I want to be able to give from now on in my life is this quality of mercy. And Shakespeare said, the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It's not just that you give me mercy or that you and I are locked into this experience of mercy. It's when I start to be able to ask for, receive, and give that I start to see the true qualities of mercy. And Shakespeare said, it is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. And in this part of the journey of recovery, I start to be able to experience this interaction between me and others. Shakespeare then says, it is an attribute to God himself. The thing that I've been wondering what it is, the thing that I've thought was an outside entity, the thing that I believed was something that other people got, which was a God, was within me all along. This ability to live in a realm of the exchange of mercy and love. Shakespeare then goes on to say, which I think this is so powerful, an earthly power doth then show likest gods when mercy seasons justice. So this life that I've been living, even in my recovery, where I demand for justice to be given, where I think I deserve to be treated like shit, where I think that they deserve to be punished for what they did to me. Now I live in a world where mercy can season justice. Because the truth is, when it comes to justice, right, we do pray for mercy. I drive to your house. I want to be forgiven. I sit in your office and I sob and tell you, nobody, you don't understand. I can't be forgiven. I can't forgive this person. We pray for it. And that same prayer teaches us to start to render the deeds of mercy. Because the truth is that as we beg, as we go through this journey of experiencing this conversation with mercy, this dogfight with mercy, we start to render. We start to experiment with it. And I believe the best of me comes when I start to have this experience on a day-to-day with this force of this reclusive soul that I am, that's afraid, that's been wounded, that's been hurt, that's been betrayed by myself, that's been betrayed by so many different things. And I start to find my way back out into humanity, and not just the humanity that's in front of me, but the collective unconscious of humans that have come before me. We start to see our own, whether we're atheist or not, we see whatever this nature is that is called the goodness, right? That's the mystery of it all. We start to see love. And this healing quality, again, remember I said earlier that we can't, it isn't just suffering, it's love that provides us with discipline. And so being able to engage in this soul force of truth, because we come back to what gave me this experience, what helped me approach my sister, what helped me to start to heal myself, was this interaction in this room, which was truth. And so truth, whether or not a person believes in a God or has the access to whatever that is spiritually, what we all can benefit from is a relationship with truth, no matter how fierce the storm, a relationship with the expression of love. That is the work of the movement of recovery. So it isn't anymore about resolving the trauma or am I going to drink again or not drink again. It's that I start to love what I know deeply. And now I know you more deeply. I know the darkness and the light, and I'm at peace with both. I know myself. I know the mysteries. And I start to be able to see that within that little tiny space, I can make transformations. I can love somebody that feels unlovable. I can be gentle with somebody that has never known gentleness, and myself as well. So this is our work. I know that seems very grandiose and narcissistic to say our corner of the world we can transform, but I believe that's what we're here for. And that's why I'm so honored that whether it's by mistake or by whatever, that I got to spend time with you all, that Jamie will be back and she will talk to you about the compassion that you have to have as you start to experience your own traumas in this work, that I got a little bit of this time with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. That just sometimes when you do this presentation, every once in a while, it just sort of brings tears to your eyes because it's so powerful what you do. So thank you.
It's so powerful what we all get to do. And it's so powerful what they're doing.
Yes.
They're just, so thank you. And please continue the practice of looking at the ways that you've demonstrated your decision to be in this thing called humanity.
Yeah.
Just your comments right now, because one of the things that I do is after I'm done with the lecture, I sort of like am hard on myself. So what you've just done is you've demonstrated your ability to make a difference in someone's life. So thank you for these kind words. They mean so much to me. But if you've got any feedback on the form of what I could have done different, this isn't my normal mode of lecturing in this Zoom kind of thing. I'm open to that because that is truth.
Yeah.
I want it all. So thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for being here and attending and taking one day out of your month or an hour out of your month to be here with all of us at the Meadows. And as always, I'll be sending your certificates out by email to those of you who complete the form. This is recorded, so next week when our video editor is back from PTO, she'll edit it and I will send the link out to you on that as well. So if you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you all so much. Have a great, great afternoon.
Bye, Jen.
Good afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.